I'll start by saying that I'm sort of introduced myself as a muesliologist. And I think in this day and age, a lot of people want to be an expert at a lot of things. And I've sort of specialised in one area, and I've followed a niche for 15, coming up to 16 years. So I think that sometimes there is something special about specialising in a little area rather than trying to be an expert at a whole heap of things. So what I'm going to talk about is the history of my business, what we do and who buys it, our marketing strategies, our export experience, our corporate culture at work, the key messages that I think have been important to me in my journeys, and the impact of children. So I'm saying that I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old in my belly, so life's pretty busy. So I start by saying to think outside the square. And I was an 18-year-old working 1 day a week in a muesli business as my part-time job. And I was one of those people who did all sorts of things. I worked at Coles behind the checkout on Thursday nights. I babysat for a family every Saturday night. I worked in a menswear shop at Christmas time. And I'd sort of do lots of different jobs to earn money. And my parents worked very hard for my education, but they certainly didn't feed me with a silver spoon, and I always had to earn my own money. And I think that sense of having to be responsible for money from an early age gave me a real sense of ownership and a value of a dollar from early on. So when I was doing my arts degree, and I was in this little business, every Tuesday we'd go and we'd make the muesli, and one day the owners came to me and they said, look, we're putting the business on the market. We've decided that we don't really want to continue it anymore. Perhaps whoever buys the business might keep you on, but perhaps they also might find someone else or run it themselves. So we thought we'd do the honourable thing and just let you know this is what our plans were. And I immediately thought, well, I love the muesli. I already make it myself. Why couldn't I be the person that bought this little business? And you have to imagine it was such a small business. It didn't really have a business name, it didn't have a bank account, but we had a concept. It was sort of, you knew where you went every Tuesday, we knew where we bought the ingredients from, and I think that sense of actually having a little bit of business structure is really important. So I sort of organised this little partnership with the other lady, Mania, that worked there with me, and we put an offer in, and I think they wanted $10,000 and we offered $2,000, and they said, no, sorry, we're not going to accept the offer. So they would continually have other people that would come in, this was our little bakery, would come in to try and look at seeing if they want to buy the business. And I was in charge of being on the cement mixer, so I used to heat the honey and the oil and put the cinnamon in with the muesli. And my partner, Mania, she was in charge of the oven. So when the new people came in, we always put them on the oven, because that was the worst job. And particularly on day one, you'd finish with little burns up your arms, and so no one actually really wanted to buy this funny little business. And a week before Christmas, the owner said to us, all right, then we'll take your $2,000. And that's how we ended up buying it. And I'm still very good friends. They're really special people, the people we bought it from. So that's a question I'm often asked, what are they saying now? And they, after 2 years with my partner, that's where the name Carman's comes from, the first 3 letters of my name and the first 3 letters of her name, she decided that small business wasn't for her. And there is a certain type of person that is prepared to live with the risks and the uncertainty of small business. And she said, you know what, I just want to go to work. I want to know how much I'm earning an hour, when I'm going to finish work, and not necessarily have to think, oh, we've just picked up a big order from David Jones and I have to pack muesli till all hours. So at that point, I bought her share out, much to my sort of horror, because I loved having her as my partner. But that was, life, and like I said, we're great friends as well. So after a few years, I thought, well, the way to really grow this business is I need to get into the places where most people shop. So I kept on knocking on the doors of the supermarkets. And I was looking at work tonight for the letter that I got a big rejection letter with no circled across it that they just sent back to me from one of the supermarket chains. And I used to never let this sort of really get to me. I'd think, well, I'll just present again and I'll keep plugging away. And one day I'd gone up to Coles and I was so nervous. I had my little bag of samples, the big sort of scary head office, and I went in and saw this buyer. And I don't think for the first 10 minutes he actually said anything to me. He just let me sit and ramble away. And now that I understand that Kellogg's goes in with 12 people and they have marketing analysts and salespeople, and here I am with my little bag, and it was literally bags tied with string with hand little tags. Anyway, this buyer said to me, "Do you know what? I'm going to give you 20 stores. Just deliver it in yourself. Let's see how those 20 stores go, and then we'll assess whether the product sells." Well, never have you seen more 20 more magnificently taken care of stores than these 20 stores. So I used to go in my little Daewoo hatchback behind the Lynn Fox semi-trailers, and they would unload 20 pallets of goods, and then up I'd roll with my one box, and it was $36, and the storeman would sign for the box, and then I'd park the car and I'd run around the front of the supermarket and sign the visitor's book and run back down to the same storeman and say, "I need that box back," and he'd sort of laugh at me, and I'd run it back up and I'd see the store manager and say, "I've got my delivery, I need to put it on the shelf." And he said, "You know what, why don't you take the end of the aisle this week? I don't think that Nestle is going to notice that we didn't do their display. You can have it." And little do I know that, that's worth $100,000, and I got these sort of beautiful displays, and the store managers would tell the customers about these, this crazy muesli girl that was sort of delivering and merchandising it herself. And I used to get my boyfriend at the time to drive me around at night because I worked out I could get to twice as many stores with no traffic. So we were kind of like bank robbers, where he'd pull up at the front entrance and I'd run in and I'd flush the shelves and I'd make it all look good, and I'd run back out and he'd take me to the next store. And he often reminds me of all these things because now he's my husband. And he says, "Do you remember what I used to do for you in the early days?"